It's practically a law of physics that the Earth will be destroyed. So it's a given that we have to leave the Earth.
A Type 1 civilization has harnessed planetary power. They control earthquakes, the weather, volcanoes. They have cities on the ocean. Anything planetary, they control.
At what point will we attain Type 2 status? Well, remember, now we're talking about centuries to maybe 1,000 years into the future. This means building the first starships. So we're going to go far beyond the solar system and reach out to the nearby stars. Well, we physicists are tired of talking about flying saucers and little green men and speculating about life in space. I'm a physicist. We use energy. A Type 1 civilization is planetary. They consume all the energy that they receive from the sun. For example, they control the weather. A Type 2 is stellar. They control all the energy output of the mother sun, sort of like the Federation of Planets in Star Trek. They've colonized a few of the neighboring planets, neighboring star systems, but not much more. Then there's Type 3. Type 3 is galactic. They roam the galactic space lanes. They can harness the energy of 100 billion stars in the galaxy, sort of like Star Wars. Star Wars would be an example of a Type 3 galactic civilization.
Now, what are we on this scale? We are Type 0. We don't even rate on this scale. We get our energy from, not from stars or galaxies, we get our energy from dead plants, oil and coal. But we can calculate when we will attain Type 1 status in about 100 years. And I am privileged to be alive in the most important era in the history of the human race, the transition from Type 0 to Type 1. And so this transition is perhaps the most important transition of all time.
We get our energy from dead plants, oil and coal. But we are about 100 years away from attaining Type 1 status. For example, the internet. What is the internet? It is the first Type 1 telephone system to be unleashed in this century. What language will this Type 1 civilization speak? Well, already English and Mandarin Chinese are the two greatest languages on the internet. And what is the European Union? What is NAFTA? What are all these trade blocs? The beginning of a primitive Type 1 planetary economy.
Some people don't want it. They fear this transition because this transition is to a planetary civilization tolerant of many cultures. This transition is also the most important because it's not clear if we're going to make it. So in other words, perhaps they didn't make it in outer space. If one day we have starships and visit other star systems, perhaps we'll find planets whose atmospheres are irradiated or whose atmospheres are too hot to bear life because they did not make the transition from Type 0 to Type 1.
Now, if you keep this scale up, at what point will we attain Type 2 status? That is, leave this solar system and start to explore the nearby stars. Well, you just take out a slide rule or a calculator. You can calculate that in just a few thousand years, we will be Type 2 like Captain Kirk. Now, Captain Kirk lives in the 23rd century, so that's about right. A little early, but still well on the scale that Nikolai Kardashev formulated in the 1960s.
Now, by the time you're Type 2, you are immortal. Nothing known to science can destroy a Type 2 civilization. Even a supernova cannot destroy a Type 2 civilization. They'll either move their home planet or they'll simply stop the nuclear fires from exploding.
Then you hit Type 3.
At that point, they already have mastered starships. Type 3, you can access the Planck energy. The Planck energy is the energy at which space and time become unstable. In other words, wormholes become possible for a Type 3 civilization. You take out a calculator and calculate growing at 3% per year, a modest growth in energy, how long before we become type 3? In 100 years, we'll be type 1. In a few thousand years, we'll be type 2. In about 100,000 years, we'll be type 3. 100,000 years is nothing on a cosmic scale.
Wormholes develop, black holes, gateway, hyperspatial gateways through space and time. That's the Planck energy. The Planck energy is a quadrillion times more powerful than the Large Hadron Collider outside Geneva, Switzerland. And why do I mention that? Because once you attain the Planck energy, wormholes, maybe even time travel, is a possibility.
And by the time a civilization becomes galactic, they may in fact have the ability to control the fate of the galaxy itself. By the way, if you're type 3, you will explore the galaxy not by sending Captain Kirk on an Enterprise hopping from star system to star system. That would take millions of years to explore the Milky Way galaxy. The way you do it is you would create a robot, have the robot land on a moon. It would create a factory. It would make millions of copies of itself on this moon, which is quite stable, and send these to other moons. Then each of these would create another factory. Starting with one robot, you would have 1 million, then 1 million million, and 1 million million million, until you had a sphere expanding at the speed of light, containing trillions of these robots. It would land on a moon and simply wait for a type 0 civilization to become type 1. Now, where have you seen that before? This is the basis of the movie 2001. The movie 2001 is perhaps the most authentic rendition of the encounter of a type 0 civilization with a type 3 civilization. So again, the generation now alive and our grandchildren are the most important generations ever to walk the surface of the earth. We are the generations that will determine whether we make the transition from type 0 to type 1, or we destroy ourselves because of our arrogance and our violence.